Okay, so we are on our last lesson of this unit, and this is called Celebrating Those Who Fought for a Cause. So today we are going to identify the main causes for which Susan B. Anthony, Eleanor Roosevelt, Mary McLeod Bethune, Jackie Robinson, Rosa Parks, Martin Luther King Jr., and Cesar Chavez fought during their lifetimes. We're going to be able to explain the terms discrimination and segregation, explain the concepts of nonviolence, civil rights, and human rights, describe the similarities among the causes supported by Susan B. Anthony, Eleanor Roosevelt, Mary McLeod Bethune, Jackie Robinson, Rosa Parks, Martin Luther King Jr., and Cesar Chavez. Describe the similarities among the methods of protest used by Susan B. Anthony, Eleanor Roosevelt, Mary McLeod Bethune, Jackie Robinson, Rosa Parks, Martin Luther King Jr., and Cesar Chavez. Our words for today are democratic, which is based on the form of government that includes giving people the right to vote for their leaders. Dignity, a sense of respect and honor. Disabilities, which are physical or mental conditions that, without the right support, might limit someone in some way. And obstacles, people or things that stand in the way of moving for a forward movement or hold up progress. And taxes, which are money raised by government to help pay for important things. So your parents and Miss Beam, we pay taxes. And so you probably have heard your parents talk about taxes. So, today we are going to kind of review the different people that we've talked about for this unit and how they were extraordinary. So, I want you to listen carefully and how we remember the people that we have learned about during this unit. Okay, so you have listened to the stories of 7 extraordinary or amazing people who dedicated their lives to making sure that all Americans have equal rights. These great Americans are able to bring about changes that resulted in new, fairer laws. They were able to do this because the United States, since its creation, has had a democratic form of government, which is one that includes the right of people to vote for their leaders. This means that the citizens of the United States are involved in political process. People can vote for political leaders who represent their interests and needs. So think about what group of people couldn't vote until the 1920s. It was women. And think about what are equal rights. Everyone has the right of certain things, like the right to vote, the right to choose their religion, and all those good things. So it took a while for every American adult to gain the right to vote, but eventually it did happen. Now each person has an equal say in deciding what kind of government they want. In order to vote in the United States, a person must be 18 years or older and to be a citizen. That means that he or she must have been born in the United States, have parents who are American citizens, or have been granted citizenship. And remember, when we studied the immigration unit last time, we learned that people who are not born in the United States but who are then become citizens are called naturalized citizens. So people who are granted citizenship are called naturalized citizens. Naturalized citizens are people who are born in another country but have chosen to become citizens of the United States. Every 2 years and every 4 years, important elections are held. People go to places called polls to vote. As you have learned, the right to vote is called suffrage. Voters can decide who should lead their state and who should lead the nation. They can help decide if taxes or money should be raised by the government to pay for important things communities need, such as hospitals, schools, and libraries, or whether taxes should be reduced so that people have little more money to spend. These are important choices that affect all Americans. Suffrage is a way of making sure that the government is following the wishes of the people that it serves. Today, we take for granted that adult American citizens have the right to vote. We hardly think about all that at all. But you have heard about the journey that people long ago went on to make this a reality. You have also heard about the obstacles that were placed in their path along their way. Remember, obstacles are people or things standing in the way of an action, preventing something from happening. Let's review the lives of the brave people that we have learned about. So this lady is Susan B. Anthony. So what was Susan B. Anthony famous for? Susan B. Anthony was, she worked to expand women's rights in America, especially the right to vote. A woman must not depend upon the protection of men, but must be taught to protect herself, she once said. Susan was a famous leader of the women's rights movement. Sadly, Susan did not live to see the passage of the 19th Amendment to the United States Constitution in 1920, which made it legal for women to vote. Without Susan's efforts, however, the battle for women's rights might have gone on for much longer. What was another cause, do you remember, that Susan B. Anthony fought for? She also helped fight for the abolishing slavery. So there was Susan B. Anthony. This woman is, as you can see on the stamp, it says First Lady Eleanor Roosevelt. So Eleanor Roosevelt worked to improve the civil rights and human rights of many groups of people in the United States. So civil rights are guaranteed by the government. Human rights are rights that may not be guaranteed, but which most people should have. So she really worked on improving the civil rights and human rights of many groups of people in the United States. During the Great Depression, Eleanor worked tirelessly to help those most in need. Eleanor believed that all people should be treated fairly, equally, and with respect. Later in her life, Eleanor worked for the United Nations. She took her message of freedom and equality all over the world. Who was her husband? Do you guys remember? President Franklin Roosevelt. This woman was Mary McLeod Bethune, and she worked to create educational opportunities for African Americans, especially girls, during the time of segregation. So segregation was the practice of keeping groups apart, and usually based on things such as skin color. Mary opened a school that eventually became a 4-year college, and she helped many African American men gain the skills they needed to be able to vote. Mary worked closely with Eleanor Roosevelt and a talented team of African American advisors to improve opportunities for all Americans. Now we have Jackie Robinson, and he was named the Rookie of the Year. It is said that Jackie Robinson broke the color barrier. It means to end segregation in professional sports. He became the first African American to play Major League Baseball. When Branch Rickey, the president of the Brooklyn Dodgers, invited Jackie to play for his team, they both knew that they were attempting to change people's attitudes and end discrimination in American sports. In 1947, when Jackie played in his first major league team at Ebbets Field, he proved that he was not only an incredible baseball player, but he was also a man who had great courage. Jackie made the world a better place. At the end of Jackie's first season with the Brooklyn Dodgers, he was chosen to be Rookie of the Year, and baseball was finally integrated so that people of any race could come and play together. This was This picture was from the story of Rosa Parks. On that cold December night in 1955, when Rosa Parks refused to give up her seat in the bus, and the world changed. Rosa's actions led to the Montgomery bus boycott. So that was when people stopped, then they refused to take the bus as a form of transportation. The power of so many people coming together to end unfair laws ultimately led to the end of the legal segregation in the South. Today, many people feel that the civil rights movement really began in that moment when Rosa Parks said no. That was why Rosa was called the mother of civil rights movement. And here, this is a familiar face. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was a peaceful leader of the civil rights movement. He led the bus boycott in Montgomery, Alabama, and he promoted change and the achievement of equal rights through nonviolence. Martin's powerful speeches gave people's hearts and minds. Changed people's hearts and minds. He led the way to change laws that were 100 years old, allowing African Americans to fully participate in American society. As a nation, we honor Martin's work each year on the third Monday of the month in January. And then this was the last man we talked about this unit. Cesar Chavez was once a migrant worker. And members of his family were migrant workers too. So they moved from one farm to the next to try and get work. During those years, Cesar became very aware of how hard life could be for people without any rights or protections. Migrant workers worked long hours for little pay. They often lived in overcrowded camps. Migrant workers could rarely afford health care. Cesar vowed to change all of this. He dedicated his life to making sure that all farm workers, including migrant workers, had certain basic rights. Cesar brought people together and created a labor union called the National Farm Workers Association. Eventually, through his efforts, Cesar succeeded in getting better pay and working conditions for all migrant workers. Without his determined leadership, these things might never have happened. Today, there are many people who work to make sure everyone in the United States is treated fairly and that their rights are respected. As just one example, it is important that people who have disabilities or physical or mental conditions without the right support might limit someone in some way, and who are challenged physically or mentally are treated fairly and equally too. People with disabilities might have trouble seeing or walking or hearing. They might need to use wheelchairs, walkers, hearing aids, or service dogs. They may have special devices that help them talk on a telephone, or may use service dogs to guide them along sidewalks and into buildings. On July 26, 1990, President George H.W. Bush signed a new law called the Americans with Disabilities Act. This law gives protections to the people with disabilities. For one thing, this law states that all people should be allowed easier access to all the places people enjoy going to, such as restaurants, movie theaters, and other buildings and public places. The law also states that public transportation, such as buses and trains, must have paths and entries that are easy to manage, such as ramps, lifts, or elevators. This law also offers to help those people who have diseases that are not curable and diseases that make it hard for people to take care of themselves. And so, you see, it is important that we stand up and recognize when people are being treated unfairly. We have just one world that we all share together. No person, because of the color of their skin, no cultural group or religious group should ever be treated unfairly. We have a responsibility to treat all human beings with dignity and respect. So dignity means a sense of respect and honor. As Dr. Martin Luther King once said, our lives begin to end the day we become silent about the things that matter. So, The main purpose of this read aloud was to summarize the accomplishments of each of the 7 activists that we discussed for this unit. The United States has a democracy type of a government, which means that no one person has all the who is in charge of the country. That many people basically get to decide things like who's in charge, like the president, who's in charge of the United States, who's in charge of the states, which are like the governor. We get to pick those people who are in charge. To vote, you have to be 18 years old, and you also have to be a citizen to vote in the United States. Remember, suffrage means the right to vote. The woman who campaigned for the right to vote, especially for women, was Susan B. Anthony. She also wanted to abolish slavery. We talked about Eleanor Roosevelt, and she worked for the United Nations, which was an internal organization. Mary McLeod Bethune helped African American men teach them to read and write, because that was one of the things that they needed to know before they could vote. And then remember Jackie Robinson. He was breaking the color barrier by being the first African American man to be in any professional sport team. And I'm just trying to see if we went over. We have, okay, so Susan B. Anthony helped get women the right to vote. Eleanor Roosevelt helped expand human rights. Mary McLeod Bethune helped African American girls and men receive education. Jackie Robinson made it possible for people of all races to play sports. Rosa Parks helped end discrimination on buses. Martin Luther King Jr. helped to get civil rights laws passed. And then finally, Cesar Chavez helped to get better laws to support farm workers. So, that is the end of the unit. I wanted to go over a couple of things with you. I'm going to go over what you are going to do for your worksheet today. You're going to put your name on it first and last. Then you're going to do a free verse poem. So a free verse poem, you basically get to write any way that you want. Okay, so you are going to pick one of the people from the unit, and you are going to write a poem. Okay, so you are going to recall about that person's life and their achievements. And there are no rules about how to write a free verse poem. Free verse poems can have rhyming words, but they don't have to. They can be many or few words on a line. A free verse poem simply made up of words that they choose to write about. Remember that free verse poems can also form shapes. So you could have, it's kind of hard to type it, but if you don't want to type it and instead you want to put it on a piece of paper and upload it onto the Google Classroom, or you can have your parents send me an email with the picture, you could do that instead. So basically what you are going to do is you are going to be writing a poem, and you get to pick whoever the leader is that you want to pick for this unit. Okay, so you are going to write a free verse poem and give your opinion of the person's achievements. So I just wanted to show you some examples of some poems that are free verse. For example, this guy right here, it shows it's in the shape of a tornado, and it's actually about tornadoes. This is in the shape of a fox, and it's about foxes. So that's what I was talking about when I said that they could be in different shapes. You can have your what's it called? Poem rhyme. So fat cat, I had a cat, who was so fat he could not even sit on his mat. He had a hat that did not fit. He put it on and then it split. Okay, so you could have it rhyme. You could have an acrostic poem, which an acrostic poem looks like this. Monday is not. Maybe this day is not one of your favorites, but never forget that every day you wake up is an amazing gift, and it's up to you to make it count. So you can have it be like that. You can also have a free verse poem where there's not really any pattern to it, like in the winter, all the spring. Nope, in winter, all the singing is in the tops of the trees, where the wind bird with its white eyes shoves and pushes among the branches like any of us. Okay? So those doesn't really rhyme at all. So you get to decide how you would like to set up a poem. Okay? And you're just going to pick one of the people that we've learned about and think about their achievements. Okay? And just kind of write about what your opinion of those achievements were. Here you're going to describe what an obstacle mean, what it means. So describe what obstacle means. That's supposed to be an S. And then please answer in complete sentence that has a capital and punctuation, and then restate the question and your answer. And then the last question is about what do all the people you have learned about in this domain have in common? And the same thing goes. Make sure you have a complete sentence that has a capital and a punctuation, and restate the question in your answer. I hope you guys have a wonderful day, and I will have, we're going to be starting a science unit about simple machines, I believe, starting next week. Tomorrow you have a test, and I just want to kind of show you what your test is going to look like. You are going to basically read each statement and select the person who fought for that cause. So, I was an important leader of the civil rights movement and believed in fighting peacefully for equal rights. So, you're going to pick which person that is. I fought for migrant workers to receive better pay and better working conditions. I refused to move and give my seat on the bus to a white person. I am known as the mother of civil rights movement. I was a professional baseball player who fought for African American athletes to play a professional sports on teams with white athletes. I was the eyes and ears for my husband who had polio, and while serving at the United Nations, I helped write a document arguing for human rights for everyone. And then I started a school for African American girls, a hospital, and a library. I also served on the Black Cabinet. I fought to end slavery for women who have the right to vote. Okay? So that is your test for tomorrow. Thank you for listening. Bye.